Hi guys, thank you all for tuning in and welcome back to Sewing Clara. In this tutorial I will show you how to stitch on zippers. So first I will explain the various types of zippers. Then I will show you how you can position your zippers differently on your piece, and then I will explain how to stitch them on in different ways. So let's jump right into this. First, let's have a look at a few types of zippers so that you know what is out there. We are going to start with this one. So that's the zipper that you call the invisible zipper. That's a zipper that you would stitch or sew into a seam wherever you want it to be very subtle. It's very easy to recognize from the top. You can see the pull tab and there is a kind of a seam in the middle, but you do not see the zipper teeth. They are visible only from the wrong side of the zipper. Next we have a coil zipper here, made of nylon. The zipper teeth are made of plastic. The zipper stoppers on this one are made of metal. And you could remove the zipper stoppers and shorten the zipper to whatever length you need, and you could put these back. That is definitely an advantage. Next we have here this one. That's a two-way zipper. As the name suggests, you can open it from either the top or the bottom. That's a type of zipper that's perfect when you're making jackets or coats, anything that you want to be able to open from both sides. So I have a zipper like that, for example, in my winter coat, and it's super practical. The next zipper, the red one, is a metal zipper. The name already says it. The teeth have been made of metal. You have here again, here on the top, these zipper stoppers. And there is actually nothing else I should say to this one. I think you get the idea. And the last one is a molded plastic zipper. So these teeth have been made of plastic, and the zipper stoppers are also made of plastic, so they cannot be removed like on these three. So that's something you have to keep in mind when you're picking your zipper, because sometimes when you wanna shorten your zipper and it's important to you that you would still have the zipper stoppers on the top, then you would have to go for a zipper type that has them, that doesn't have just plastic zipper stoppers that you cannot take off and put back on. Today we are going to be working with the invisible zipper and with the coil zipper. I find that especially for the beginning, when you're just learning these things, these are really nice to work with. We will start working with the coil zipper, and I have here these two denim rectangles, and that will help me to show you the different ways of how you can position your coil zipper. So the first way is the easiest. That is a way where once you pinned the zipper in place and stitch it in place, the pull tab and the teeth will be still visible. By the way, we're just gonna ignore the length of the zipper for now. That's not relevant. This is just about positioning the zipper for now. So I will fold here the edge 1 centimeter inwards, and I will start placing the edge of the folded fabric next to the zipper teeth. And I will pin it in place like so. And then I'll do the exactly same on the other side. So now the zipper teeth are still visible. You can clearly see the pull tab. I could open and close my piece, and if this zipper had the right length now, or if I shortened it to the correct length, I could go on and stitch the zipper in place. I recommend pinning the zipper at an angle before you start stitching and making sure that the fabric is nicely flat. Because what you see sometimes on things that have zippers is that they make a little waves, and that's because the fabric was a little bit too loose on the zipper. So always flatten it nicely and make sure that once the zipper has been pinned in, that it doesn't make any weird waves. And you can see I could move it a little bit further to the right, so I think that would have been the case. So that's why it's always good to really play with your work a little bit and to flatten everything, straighten everything. Sometimes taking an extra minute will save you a lot of time later. So now I'm happy with the result, and I could go ahead and stitch the zipper in place, either with a back stitch or faux back stitch, maybe even chain stitch. I would stitch quite close to the edge so that the zipper would be nicely held in place. And that would be the first way how to position the zipper. And another way is to hide the zipper beneath the sides of the fabric. So you would stitch on one side the way we did before, and then you would have to fold your fabric a little bit more in. That means you would need to account for a bit bigger seam allowance, and then you would position the fabric over the zipper like so, but you would stitch it close to the zipper teeth. So you have to kind of feel with your fingers and see where the zipper teeth are, because once you're going to be ready to stitch, you want to make sure that you would not stitch through the zipper teeth, but at the same time you want to stitch close to the zipper teeth. So I'm just going to pin it in like so that I can show you how it looks like when the zipper opens. So let me slide these a little bit back. And now the way the zipper is positioned, you can't see it, and when you open this a little bit, you would be still able to open your zipper nicely. And again, you could stitch it in place either with a back stitch or chain stitch or faux back stitch. So that's the second way of how you can position your zipper. And the third way that I want to show you is actually very similar to the second way, but the amount of fabric that goes over the zipper will be same from the top and from the bottom. So basically, the place where these pieces of fabric meet will be centered, so it's going to be exactly over the center of the coil zipper. And in order to do that, and in order to work really precisely, there is a really nice trick. So you grab your pieces and you align them like so, pin them in place, preferably at an angle because it's easier to stitch through. And then you would thread your needle, don't have to tie it at the end, and you would do simply a running stitch. The stitches can be pretty big, doesn't have to be super subtle. The idea here is only to keep these two pieces in place together, but in a way that you will be able to pull out the thread then easily after you'll be done with positioning and stitching in the zipper. The distance of your running stitch from the edge has to be big enough so that there would be enough seam allowance so that you can stitch your zipper in place and pin it in place. So I always like aligning the zipper teeth with the running stitch and making sure that the edge is either aligned here with the edge of my zipper or that there is a little bit more fabric, and then you're safe. Now I'm going to grab these two pieces and they're facing wrong side up. I'm carefully going to open the seam and flatten it. Ideally you would go and press this because then it's gonna be flatter and it's gonna stay nicer in place, but it will do for now. And then you can either position the zipper on it like so and then turn your work around, or you grab your zipper and then position this over your zipper. Make sure that the center of the seam is aligned with the center of the zipper and pin the fabric to the zipper. when I'm done pinning, I like turning my work around and checking if the zipper is centered. And then I start replacing the pins with pins that are at an angle. And again, making sure that everything is nicely flat. And then I would stitch my zipper in place, running stitch, back stitch, fall back stitch, or chain stitch. And that would be it. And once you would stitch your zipper in place, you would simply grab one end of the thread that you used for the running stitch and you would remove it. And then this seam will open and you'll be able to use your zipper. And when you would close it, it would be nicely hidden between these two sides of fabrics. There is also another way how to position a zipper. I think it's the best to use a coil zipper for this. So I plan on making scented sachets, and I have here this piece of denim that's shaped like a heart, and I want to have a small zipper on the back. So I'm gonna grab actually the other side because it's a little bit more faded, and I have here a rectangle of denim, and I'm gonna place it wrong side facing up somewhere like so, align it centered, and I will pin it in place. I will connect the corners and make here somewhere a mark in the middle, and then do the same so that I find my center. Okay, so this is my center, and I will now measure. That's 2.5 centimeters. So 2.5 centimeters from this side, and I'll connect these two dots, and I'll have a center line. And now I make additional lines very close to the central line. So that I would have a small rectangle that would be big enough for these teeth of a coil zipper. So it's supposed to be pretty small actually. I'm gonna make sure I go closer to the central line. And that's supposed to be the opening that I want to create for my zipper. It sounds all complicated, but don't worry, it's actually not. It's actually pretty easy. So this is the hole that I want to create. And I will clearly mark the line in the center, because we're going to need it in order to cut it open. And I will make here 2 marks at the end at an angle, so it's going to create little triangles. Again, looks more complicated than it is. Now I will thread my needle and I will stitch around these outer edges. So I stitched with a back stitch around this edges of the rectangle. Here's what it looks like from the wrong side, so you can clearly see the rectangle. And I have here buttonhole scissors, and I started poking into the fabric and cutting along the center line. But I will make sure I cut only towards the point of the triangle. And this fabric is very thick, so I will cut 1 layer at a time. So I cut the layer of this, and then I started cutting the layer of the heart. And I will grab my regular scissors, because it's gonna be just so much easier. And now I have to cut here at an angle very close to the very edge. So again, I will do it in 2 layers, and that's something I will definitely do with the buttonhole scissors because they're pointier and I can work more precise with them than with the chunky regular scissors that I'm using for cutting my fabrics. And even though, as I said, this looks complicated, it's actually not. You just have to work very precise and take your time for this. But it's nothing that should scare you. So now that we cut this open, we can turn this rectangle inwards. So basically just push it with your fingers inside. And you'll be left with this wonderfully shaped, with this rectangular hole. We will pin the edges in place. You just have to play a little bit with the edges and roll them back and forth, shape them nicely. And if something makes wrinkles like this, that means you might have cut a little bit too far from the edge, or simply pull on it and reshape it with your finger, whatever works for you. Other than that, you would turn it back to the wrong side of the rectangle that you stitched on and cut closer to the edge, but this will work. And now we made our opening, so I can grab the coil zipper and place it so that the pull tab will be exactly here on this side in the corner, and I can start pinning it in place. So this is a great way of positioning a zipper somewhere in the center of your piece. Again, you can stitch it on with a backstitch, fall backstitch, or chain stitch. And of course, here you would have to cut the zipper back. So I will simply grab my scissors and chop the zipper off here. And that would be it. And now it only has to be stitched in place, and then I can continue creating this scented sachet, and it will have this opening so that I can always refill it with fresh lavender anytime I need. Before I stitch the zipper in place, as always, I like putting the pins at an angle because it's just so much more convenient for stitching and they are not so much in my way. I will stitch it in place with a beige polyester yarn, and the needle that I'm using is one of my sharps, so it's an universal needle. And we can start stitching. So I will simply do the back stitch. I will stitch quite close to the edge. And I'm done with the back stitch, and our zipper has been stitched in place. Now, when you turn it to the wrong side, this rectangle is now still bigger. You can go ahead and carefully cut it back so that it's only as big as the zipper. You could, of course, make the rectangle smaller in the first place, but I personally like making it a little bit bigger because I find it easier to turn and to work with. And I much rather have some extra fabric that I can cut back than having difficulties turning my piece. So that's what the coil zipper now looks like. So last but not least, let me show you how to shorten the coil zipper before you stitch it in or pin it in place, because here on the heart we've done it once it has been already pinned in place. I simply chopped it off because I knew I'm going to be stitching around the bottom edge so that I couldn't accidentally pull the pull tab out entirely. But this one hasn't been pinned in place yet, so I need to make sure that the end that I'm gonna shorten will be secured. So you can either cut your zipper on the top, and then you will have to make zipper stoppers for the top on each side of the teeth, or you cut your zipper on the bottom, and then you will have to create a zipper stopper on the bottom. And I thought for the sake of this tutorial, we'll do it on both sides. So the zipper is supposed to be that long for my project, so this is how I will position it. So I'm gonna make a mark where I wanna cut it. I will open the zipper a little bit so that it's far away from this edge where I will chop it off, where I now won't have any zipper stoppers. And I cut these off. And then I will also cut off this end. Now the zipper is as long as I need it, but don't close it all the way back. We have to make the stoppers first. Since this is a gray zipper, you should use a gray yarn, but because I'm filming this for you guys so that you can see it easily, I'm gonna use a light beige yarn so that you can see it. So I'm gonna measure about 1 centimeter or like half an inch from this end and make a mark. I double threaded my needle and I'm simply going to stitch here. I'm gonna create multiple whip stitches around the zipper teeth. And I will make it pretty dense. So I think I will make like at least 5, maybe even 7, or maybe even more stitches. And that will be my new zipper stopper on this end. Alright, my zipper is secure on this end, so you can see I can slide it all the way to the right, but it won't go further because this end has been stitched in place. And I have to do the same here on the top. So I'm gonna go about half an inch away from the top. And I will do the same, so I will stitch around these teeth on both sides with a whip stitch. I will make several stitches and that way the zipper is gonna be secure on this side as well. Alright, so now zipper is shortened. We have zipper stopper on each side and we can use it for our project. So this is going to be a tissue hoodie. I am not gonna go over the whole procedure of making this hoodie because there's a tutorial as a part of this course for these hoodies, but this one will have a zipper. So I have on one side a little bit longer seam allowance and on the other side a shorter one, and you probably already guessed why. As I have shown you, you can pin the zipper in place so that one side covers the zipper, and that's what I want to have here, just because it's fun. I could of course have it centered, but wouldn't that be too easy? And here is how I want to have it positioned then once the hoodie will be done. So I want to have it closer to one edge. That's why I went with this style where one side is covering the entire zipper. And that's why I didn't choose to have it centered. That's something you could also do when you would be making a pillowcase, because this is basically nothing else than a tiny pillowcase. So with the help of editing magic, I will now create the back stitch. And here we have it. So the zipper is hidden, and since there is a zipper stopper, it can go only to a certain point, and same goes for this side. And now we'll finish this hoodie. And there you have it, all done. Already filled with pocket tissues. I embellished the other side with my iron-on signature crest. I also finished the heart. I filled it with lavender and I stitched on beads on the front. So if you want to know how to stitch on beads, there is a tutorial as a part of this course, so you can go ahead and check it. Now the seam zipper, I'll show you how I do it. There might be more ways, but this is how I like doing it. So I always grab the seam zipper and pin it in place first wrong side up, right side facing the right side of the fabric where I'm going to be stitching it on. And then I do the same with the other side. So here I make sure that the seam allowance is exactly the amount I need in order to go from the edge of the zipper towards the seam. So you simply have to measure from here till here and that be your seam allowance on the fabric, because then it's, in my opinion, very easy to work with and you can be way more exact. So that's, again, at least from my experience. So I'm gonna pin this side also in place. And now when I would open it, you would see quite a lot of the zipper, so we're definitely not done yet here. This is just to pin the zipper in place. You will have to open the zipper. I zoomed in and I hope that you will be able to see it. So these are the teeth. You can pull them over to the side. And here you can see a little kind of a seam, and that's where you want to stitch. Almost. You have to stay a little bit away from the seam, otherwise the teeth would get caught. So I'm gonna do simply a running stitch, because this is just to demonstrate how it works, and I'm gonna do it with a white thread so that you will be able to see where I stitched. To make this a little bit easier, you could of course grab your pins and put them in at an angle like so from the side where you're stitching, and you could fold the teeth of the zipper a little bit away and kind of pull the pin over them, and that would keep them open and it would be a little bit easier to stitch. So that's something that I like doing, especially when I'm working on my sewing machine. Alright, so both sides have been now stitched in place. So when I fold the teeth a little bit sidewards, you will see that the running stitch is pretty close to the teeth, but it's still far enough so that the yarn wouldn't get caught in the teeth. And now we can close our practicing piece. So here is what it looks like from the wrong side. So you can see the teeth and the back of the pull tab, and when I turn it to the right side, except for the pull tab, because I have used a contrast color, you can't really see anything. There's just the seam. And that is a really great thing whenever you want to have a zipper that's basically invisible, but of course in normal case you should use something that matches the garment. But again, I like using contrast colors for my tutorials because it's way easier to see on camera. So that's how you stitch in the invisible zipper. Of course you would rather stitch it in with a back stitch. This was just to make this a little bit faster, and you would also have to shorten the zipper to whatever length you need. And here's what I have done with the two denim rectangles. So I turned it into this tiny scented purse. It's filled again with lavender, and since the zipper was already pink, I kept anything else also in pink so that it would go with the zipper, so that it would look like using a contrast color was on purpose. And this is actually going to be a present for one of my friends who loves the color pink. I think that for the beginning it's the best to start working with the simple coil zipper and practice the way you have seen in this video. So basically take two rectangles of fabric, try to pin the zipper in different ways, play with it a little bit, get used to flattening the fabric. Maybe at the beginning stitch it in just with a running stitch that you can easily open again if you're not happy with the result. And once you feel more comfortable, you can go on and use the back stitch or fall back stitch or chain stitch and even create some nice pieces. So these are just a few examples of what you can create once you learned how to position your zipper and how to stitch it in place. I hope that you guys enjoyed this tutorial and that you found it helpful. Thank you all for watching and happy sewing!